Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm just going to be doing a monthly wrap up of everything I watched last month in September, which I've logged in my Letterboxd diary. So if you're not following me on Letterboxd, I'm there under sketchy_ed, and if you follow me, I'll follow you back. So I'm pretty much going to go through all the films that I watched last month and give kind of mini reviews for each of them. I'll then share my rating, and at the end of the video, I'll highlight what my favorite and least favorite film of the month was, and that only includes first-time watchers. Okay, so let's dive right in. I started the month by watching Revenge. After experiencing a traumatic assault, a woman is left for dead in the desert. Severely injured, she must use her wit and gumption to survive and exact revenge on her abusers. So I ended up watching this one on Shudder. It came up and I've heard pretty positive reviews for it, so I thought I'd give it a go. So I really enjoyed the first part of this film. I thought the cinematography was really interesting and the score was awesome. It kind of made you want to party. It was super fun, but unfortunately it kind of just went downhill from there. My biggest problem with this film is that it was just so unrealistic, and I just felt like it kept dragging on. So much of this film is so unbelievable, and it really was frustrating me watching it. I've since looked into this film to see what I was missing, and apparently it was meant to be kind of over the top. It wasn't meant to be realistic, but I kind of didn't get that vibe. But obviously I'm an outlier because so many people did and so many people loved this film. I just felt like it wasn't for me, unfortunately. Although I did enjoy how brutal and bloody the film is, and the end scene in particular was really fun. I gave this one a 2.5 out of 5. Next, I watched The Social Network. Based around Mark Zuckerberg's rise to success with Facebook, The Social Network follows his journey from college student to the founder of a billion-dollar social media platform. So this one is actually a rewatch. I've watched it around 4 times previously. I just love this film. It's directed by David Fincher, who in my last Everything I Watch video, I mentioned that I think he's my favorite director, and honestly, every time I watch one of his films, it just cements that. I really love his style. This film is fantastic. It's so well directed and the cast is awesome. Jesse Eisenberg does an amazing job portraying Mark Zuckerberg, and he comes across as so just really unlikable. It was admittedly a bit weird watching this now. I forgot that Armie Hammer was in this film, and obviously recently all this stuff's come up about how kind of fucked up he is. So yeah, that kind of caught me off guard a little bit. Fortunately, I was able to separate the whole drama surrounding him from my viewing experience, so it wasn't impacted. But yeah, it was a little bit confronting. The story is so engaging, and I love films that are kind of in this ballpark where they show how these super successful businesses were formed. Another one that I'm a big fan of is The Founder, which is about McDonald's. If you haven't seen that one, I would also put that one on your watch list. But yeah, this is an incredible film. It's super well done. I love it so much, and if you haven't seen it yet, definitely one to add to your watch list. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5. I then watched Goodnight Mommy. When twins Elias and Lucas are dropped off to stay at their mother's house, they're shocked to see her face covered in a gauze mask after receiving facial cosmetic surgery. However, they notice something off about her and they grow suspicious of the true identity of the person masquerading as their mother. So this is an American remake of the Austrian original Goodnight Mommy, and this version stars Naomi Watts as the mother. The story is essentially the same, although there are a few differences. A big difference is the brutality. The original Goodnight Mommy is extremely hard to watch. It's so brutal. It's super disturbing, as opposed to this version, which is way more watered down. It's more, I guess, psychological as opposed to torture porn. Another big difference with this version is the characterization of the mother figure. In the original, the mother figure is so terrifying, but she's way more ominous and mysterious, and you don't really know much about her, whereas with this character in the remake, She feels way more human, and don't get me wrong, she does have her moments, and Naomi Watts does an incredible job. Like, there's parts of it that come across so chilling, but she definitely has way more warmth. And also the makeup of the mother with her facial bandages, it's definitely a massive downgrade from the original. The original was way more effective, but yeah, I'm not sure the reasoning behind that, but yeah, it just seemed way more cheap. So a big issue I had with the original film is that I saw the twist. Like, I figured it out within the first 5 minutes, and that really frustrated me watching it. So I guess my experience of the original is kind of impacted by that. So I was interested to see if they were able to kind of execute it better in this one. But I guess it's hard to know that when you go in knowing what the twist is. But I still think that it was quite obvious. A big reason why I think that is that my husband kind of just wandered in around halfway through the film, and he sat down, and literally after like 3 lines of dialogue, he asked me the question, pretty much saying the twist. So yeah, I feel like they're both on a level par there. I mean, it's probably not fair to compare the 2 films, but it's a remake. Of course, we're going to compare them. But overall, when taking it at face value, I thought it was a decent film. I thought it was above average. Although if you've seen the original, I wouldn't bother with this version. But anyway, I gave this a 3 out of 5. I then watched Relic. Relic follows the story of 3 generations of women: grandmother Edna, daughter Kay, and granddaughter Sam. When Kay and Sam are notified of the disappearance of elderly widowed Edna, they travel to their remote family home to find a sinister presence haunting the house and starting to take control of Edna. So this one was another rewatch, and I watched it initially when it first came out in 2020, and ever since then I haven't had the willpower to revisit it until recently, well, last month. This film absolutely wrecked me, and it wrecked me both times. It caused me to break down into tears, and that last scene in particular, just so devastating, and I was just miserable for hours afterwards. It's such a powerful film. I think it's incredible. Relic was directed by Natalie Erica James, who's an Australian director, and this was her directorial debut. And she's actually working on a film at the moment. It's another horror film, and it's called Apartment 7A. They're kind of keeping everything under wraps, so I'm not sure what it's about, but I'll definitely be checking it out. I loved this film, and I just think she is just fantastic. This film is so close to being perfect, in my opinion. It has great casting, it's got gorgeous cinematography, it's got an unsettling score, and the story is just, it's so sad, but it's so good. And just a warning, if you haven't seen this film yet, if you have a loved one who suffered from dementia or Alzheimer's or anything in that ballpark, then this one might hit close to home. So yeah, it's a tough watch. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5. I've actually got a full review for this one on my channel, but it was literally my second video on this channel, so I guess watch at your own peril. I then watched The Vigil. A man agrees to take on a job for one night watching over the deceased body of a member of the Orthodox Jewish community he used to be a part of. During his shift, he experiences some terrifying events and realizes something sinister is residing within the home. This one had been on my watch list for quite some time now, and as soon as I started watching it, I was absolutely hooked. It did a great job building a suspenseful atmosphere with dark lighting and shadows in the background. I really enjoyed 3/4 of this film, but unfortunately I felt like the last quarter let it down. I really wasn't a fan of the kind of finale of the film, and I just found that it was anticlimactic, and the choice of the practical effects they used really drew me out of it. That being said, I really enjoyed the very final moment just before it cuts to credits. It definitely kept me thinking, because there is a lot in this film that is allegorical and metaphorical, and it did make me think about it for hours after watching it, and I think that it did a great job in that respect. Even though the last quarter kind of put a dampener on the experience for me, I still thought it was a solid film and above average, so I gave this a 3 out of 5. I then watched Sins of Our Mother. The disappearance of 2 children opens an investigation which unearths a trail of suspicious deaths revolving around their mother, her new husband, and their extreme religious beliefs. So this is a 3-part docuseries on Netflix, which was directed by Skye Borgman, who also directed The Girl in the Picture and Abducted in Plain Sight, which if you haven't seen those documentaries, they're awesome. So I definitely recommend checking those ones out. This was so disturbing and just plain crazy. And I don't understand the things that people do in the name of religion. It's wild to me. I don't understand. The trial surrounding this case is currently still pending, so there's no clear conclusion at the end, just kind of a heads up, but man, these 2 people definitely have a lot to answer for. This is another one where now, being a mother myself, I just can't comprehend what goes through people's heads and how they could do such horrendous things to their children. With regards to the documentary, I thought it was well done, but at times I couldn't keep track of who was who, and the timelines were a little bit messy, but I still thought it was solid and worth a watch. It will definitely make you really angry. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I then watched Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. A group of rich 20-somethings throw a party in a mansion during a hurricane. When nighttime rolls around, they decide to play a game called Bodies, 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 which is kind of like Murder in the Dark meets Among Us. However, things go very wrong when they find the dead body of one of the gang and they suspect a real killer is among them. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is an A24 horror comedy starring Amandla Stenberg and Maria Bakalova, who at the time of watching, I couldn't quite place where I'd seen her before, but I've since found out that she was in Borat 2, which kind of blew my mind. So I'll start this off by saying that I really enjoyed this film. It's kind of like a murder mystery and it'll keep you guessing the whole time. It has a pretty sick score, which will make you want to party, which I thought fit the vibe of this film perfectly. It has a lot of humor and I really enjoyed the humor in it, especially from Rachel Sennett playing Alice. Her character was hilarious and I just loved all of her lines. They landed perfectly. The characters in general are pretty unlikable, like pretty much all of them. They're this group of kind of friends who all talk behind each other's back, who are super fake, but I really liked the dynamic. I thought it was a lot of fun. Also, the ending is just amazing. I really enjoyed how it wrapped up. So funny. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5. I then watched Watcher. After a woman moves to a foreign country with her boyfriend, she notices a man watching her from the apartment across the street. Things start to escalate when she believes that he's a serial killer who beheads women who's been terrorizing the region. Watcher is a slow burn psychological thriller, which I wouldn't quite categorize as horror, although there is a pretty graphic scene towards the end of the film, but for the most part, the film's pretty tame. That's not to say that it was boring. I think it was really well done and it was super tense and had a really suspenseful atmosphere. It was directed by Chloe Okuno, who also directed one of the segments of VHS 94, but also she directed a horror short called Slut, which I've actually seen before and I've mentioned in one of my videos, which I'll link above. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting to find out after watching the film. Watcher stars Micah Monroe, who did an awesome job. Her character is super isolated. She's moved to this foreign country and she's pretty much alone most of the time while her boyfriend's at work. And kind of on the topic of isolation, I really liked the choice to not put subtitles when the characters were talking Romanian. And at first I was like super frustrated, like not knowing what they were saying, because there's a lot of this film where the characters are talking around her in a different language and you have no idea what they're saying. But I thought that was brilliant just to kind of put us in her shoes and to feel her frustration and to feel her isolation of being left out of it all. I thought that was brilliant. The concept of the film is pretty straightforward. It doesn't really bring anything new to the table, but I still thought it was a solid film and I really enjoyed it. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. I then watched Smile. After witnessing a traumatic incident involving a deeply disturbed patient claiming to be being stalked by a malicious entity of sorts, A psychiatrist's world is turned upside down as she begins experiencing the same terrifying visions as described by her former patient. Smile is a newly released horror film which is making massive waves in the horror community right now. And to be honest, before watching this, I wasn't expecting much, but I was so pleasantly surprised. I think that this film is super creepy and extremely well done. There's so many jump scares in this film and they're all super effective. And the film itself is pretty scary. Like, I think that they just nailed the horror aspects. It was a lot of fun. The film also looks and sounds great with some really artistic shots and interesting camera work and an amazing score. I actually have a full review for this one, so I won't go on about this one too much, and I'll link it above and below, but I really enjoyed this film. If you haven't seen this one, I really recommend going to the cinemas and seeing it. It's a really good one to see in the cinemas, and it's not a perfect film, but it is pretty good. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5. I then finished the month by watching The Bay. Years after a deadly virus swept through a small town killing hundreds of residents, the buried footage is resurfaced, shining a light on the horrific events that unfolded and what caused it to happen. So this one was recommended to me by a viewer, and I'm really sorry I can't pronounce your name, but I'll pop your comment somewhere here. But I really appreciate the recommendation. So The Bay is a found footage mockumentary style horror film, and I'm a massive fan of the found footage subgenre. It's actually probably my favorite subgenre of horror, and I'm really happy to report that I really enjoyed this one. I thought that this was presented in a really interesting way. I haven't quite seen another found footage that kind of feels like this one. It's definitely one that will make your skin crawl, and I definitely don't recommend eating while watching it, which I learned the hard way. It's pretty gross and will kind of turn your stomach a little bit. A big reason why I love the found footage subgenre is that it feels super immersive, and I actually find that these, for me, are some of the most effective horror films. It really allows you to put yourself in the character's shoes, and to me that's terrifying. The Bay feels quite original and it's super fun, and although the ending kind of trails off and does kind of a hard stop before it goes into the credits, that felt a little bit jarring, but other than that, I thought that this was a really great, solid found footage film, and I definitely recommend seeing it if you haven't. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. Thank you so much again for your recommendation. So that was everything I watched in September. So now I'm going to highlight what my favorite and least favorite films of the month were. For my favorite film, based on the ratings, it's a 4-way tie between Bodies, 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 Watcher, Smile, and The Bay. But if I had to choose one, I think I'm gonna have to go with Smile. Again, if you haven't seen that one yet, I do recommend going out to the cinemas and seeing it in that environment. For least favorite film, that would have to go to Revenge. Again, it wasn't a bad film, it was just average, and unfortunately for Revenge, I had quite a solid month of first time watches, so unfortunately it takes the cake. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. Let me know in the comments below what you watched this month and what your favorites were. Also, if you have any recommendations for me, I'm always keen to add more movies to my watch list. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.